Hello, thank you for joining us today for this workshop, Flip the Script on Aging, presented by Hazel Tyshin, Elder Care Specialist, and sponsored by Elder Care Work-Life Wellbeing at the University of Kentucky. Today, we're going to talk about aging and ageism, and so let's get started. Ask yourself, how old would you be if I didn't know my age? And as you can see here, our perception is a big part of how we feel about how old we are. Ageism, elder bias. What is ageism? The stereotypes of how we think, the prejudice, how we feel, or discrimination, how we act against individuals based on their age. Ageism results in a negative perception of older adults and a belief that they are not as valuable or as important as younger individuals. And it gets back to this iceberg concept where most of what's happening is below the surface. There are several types of ageism. These are just a few. Internalized ageism. It's how we feel about ourselves as aging people. Those stereotypes about age are often internalized at a young age, even by age 3. Children are familiar with age stereotypes, which are then reinforced over their lifetimes. Institutional ageism. It's unfair age-based restrictions in laws, policies, and practices of public and private institutions, including the healthcare system and the workplace. Intentional ageism. This involves financial scams that are targeting older adults, marketing material that focuses on older adult stereotypes, denying employment or unfair hiring practices based on age. Cultural ageism is the everyday, invisible, profoundly ingrained and normalized negative messages about aging and old people embedded in the movies we watch, on TV, songs, jokes, and etc. And benevolent ageism is patronizing, paternalistic beliefs or behaviors that older people need to be protected because they're no longer able to make decisions for themselves. So some examples of ageism that appear in personal relationships include treating family members as though they are invisible, they're unintelligent, or expendable based on their age. Making ageist jokes that imply someone is less valuable or less worthy of respect based on their age. Making offensive generalizations about a specific generation, example, that boomers are not tech savvy. Disregarding someone's concerns or wishes due to their age, or taking advantage of someone's age for personal gain, such as to make money. Using someone's age as justification to undermine, deceive, or control them. Elder speak. This is the communication to older adults that sounds like baby talk, and we've all heard this and maybe even used it. It arises from an ageist assumption of frailty, incompetence, and dependence. We look at an elderly person and we assume. It's an inappropriate endearment that can sound bossy, words like honey, sweetie, dearie. Caregivers may resort to plural pronouns. Are we ready to take our bath? Instead of saying, are you ready to take your bath? Implying that the person is not able to act as an individual. Elder speakers employ louder volume, shorter sentences, simple words intoned slowly, exaggerated sing-song vocal quality, more suited to preschoolers. Elder speak may be well-intended with people just trying to show they care. However, there are often negative outcomes, especially with persons who have dementia. Exposure to elder speak correlates with negative behaviors and resistance to care. Ageism in the workplace. Refusing to hire people over or under a certain age. Yes, ageism affects even the young population, but for today, we're kind of looking at the older population. Asking for someone's age at a job interview when it's not relevant to the work, which, by the way, I think might be illegal, but still might be done. Enacting policies that unfairly privilege one age group over another. Viewing older people as out of touch, less productive, or stuck in their ways. And as with race and gender, people treat older workers as a category. In a recent survey from resume and career advice service My Perfect Resume, 99% of workers over the age of 40 reported ageism in the workplace, including pressure to conceal their age and adjust behaviors to fit in. So how did we get here? We have these generation gaps and how the views on aging have changed over time. So we have, the greatest generation, the silent generation, baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, Gen Z, Generation Alpha, and we even have predicted or projected Generation Beta for anyone born from 2025 going forward. So our traditionalists are the great generation and the silent generation. These people are dependable, straightforward, tactful, loyal. They are motivated by respect, recognition, providing long-term value to the company. Their worldview is obedience over individualism, age equals seniority, and advancing through the hierarchy. Then we get to the baby boomers. They're optimistic, competitive, workaholic, team-oriented. They're motivated by company loyalty, teamwork, and duty. Their worldview is achievement comes after paying one's dues, sacrifice for success. And 49% of baby boomers who expect to or are already working past age 70 do not plan to retire. Generation X, they're flexible, informal, skeptical, independent. They're motivated by diversity, work-life balance, their personal professional interest rather than the company's interest. So you can start to see a shift. Their worldview is favoring diversity. They're quick to move on if the employer fails to meet their needs. They're resistant to change at work if it affects their personal lives. So there's quite a shift to the person versus the job. 55% of startup founders who are Gen Xers, that's the highest percentage. And by 2028, Gen Xers will outnumber baby boomers. Millennials, they're competitive, civic and open-minded, and achievement-oriented. They're motivated by responsibility, the quality of their manager, unique work experiences. Their worldview is seeking challenging growth and development. They want a fun work life and work-life balance, likely to leave an organization if they don't like the change. And 75% of the global workforce will be made up by millennials this year. Generation Z, they're global, entrepreneurial, progressive, and less focused. They're motivated by diversity, personalization, individuality, and creativity. Their worldview is self-identified as digital device addicts. They value independence and individuality. They prefer to work with millennial managers versus an older manager. They're innovative coworkers and new technologies. So they want to be a part of innovation, new technology, and younger work team. 67% of Gen Xers who want to work at companies where they can learn skills to advance their careers, and 80% believe that the government and employers should subsidize or pay full tuition or provide direct training for students. So you can see the shift been quite a bit. So you know you're old when you're 40 and you stop growing at both ends and start growing in the middle. You know you're old when you're 50 and people say you look good for your age. And you know you're old when you're 60 and you hear your favorite songs in an elevator. You know you're old when you're 70 and you eat supper at 5 o'clock. You know you're 80 when almost everything hurts and what doesn't hurt doesn't work. You know you're 90 when you still look 89 from a distance. And you know you're 100 when there's nothing left to learn the hard way. So these are all myths that have tagged on aging that give us those negative perceptions and myths about what it's like as we move through our life. Let's look at some of the negative versus the positive. These words on the left, this word cloud, I looked and all I could find were two words that were positive. One was happy and one was wise. The rest of the words, whether they're small, big, whatever, are all related to senile, lonely, vulnerable, weak, stupid, victims, fragile, lonely, sick, grumpy. Those are all the words that that come to mind, and we need to flip that switch. We need to flip that script. We want to look and use words more like on the right side here. So while there's still some words like sweetie and codger and old fogey, there's the words that are more pronounced are really positive words. They're experienced, they're spry, they're elder, they're alert, they're focused, they're decisive, they're mature, they're seasoned citizens, and they're experienced. So we want to really start to work towards using this kind of language and thinking this way about people as they're aging and as they reach, senior and elder elder age. So active agers, these are the new elderly. So who are these active agers? They're celebrating who they've become at this time in their lives, and they're not longing to revisit their youth. They like where they are. They like where they've arrived. They're embracing new exciting phase in their lives when they have the time, money, and drive to fulfill a host of dreams and desires. So they've wanted it, and now they're going for it. They're more likely to feel good about their appearance compared to 18 to 35-year-olds. So they've come to an acceptance. They feel good about maybe the wrinkles on their face or the gray in their hair. Consumers 55 plus are actively pursuing a wide range of physical activities and are not inhibited by a lack of mobility. So they're making, staying out there, they're being active, they're staying engaged. Consumers are happiest between the ages of 65 and 79. Active agers are in a place with the resources to fully explore their strong sense of adventure, and they're lifelong learners. Over 90%, 95% of consumers over 65 are living independently. So they're still very independent. And there's virtually no relationship between age and performance. Age is just a number that we tag on ourselves, but our performance is not restricted by any number. So to flip the script on aging, we want to look at these active agers and see what's going on. So they have an average age of 66.7 years old. 8 out of 10 own their own home. They spend an average of 1+ hours a day browsing the internet. There might be more, slightly more female active agers than men. Only 30% of baby boomers are active agers. So there's a lot of the baby boom population that is not acting in this new mindset. They're socially conscious. They volunteer. They work at charities. They engage in the community. They spend nearly 5 hours a week on social media apps. So they love their social media just like a teen. They're embracing new tech. 4 out of 10 have purchased or plan to purchase a smart speaker like Google Home or Amazon Echo in the next 2 years. They're physically active. Pickleball has certainly proven that. Nearly 3/4 have exercised regularly in the past 12 months, and we all know how important that is, staying active and mobile. It's the best defense against aging. They're more likely to trust newspaper ads than TV or radio or online or social ads for information about products and services. They're embracing new forms of entertainment. Nearly 4 out of 10 have canceled or plan to cancel their cable, satellite TV service in the next 2 years, and they're going to start using those new technologies, streaming and all the other things that are available. So ask yourself, what can I do? How can I help flip this script? On an individual level, you can contribute to flipping the script on aging by being an ally. Allyship involves dedicating personal time and energy to act against ageism by becoming aware of it. Reflect on how ageism shapes one's own thoughts, feelings, and life experiences. How have you experienced ageism? Learn about it. Learn about ageism affects others by listening to personal stories, reading books, and researching, just like being a part of this workshop today. Develop skills. Learn about and practice advocacy skills, such as knowing when to speak up and when to step back. We all need a good advocate in our life. We need to be sure that we take those opportunities to maybe speak up and make some corrections, send things in a different direction, and then act. Put this knowledge into practice. Try correcting ageist stereotypes, challenging those ageist jokes, or speaking out against ageist discrimination. Remember that this does not involve rescuing people, but supporting and advocating for them in situations where they're struggling to be heard. So to communicate our concern, this gets back to that elder speak. Let the person that you care know that you care by paying attention to your tone of voice, your facial expressions, keep them positive, your words, don't use that elder speak, your gestures, your attention, give your full attention, affirmations, ability to listen to criticism, complaints, sadness without disagreeing, correcting, retaliating, or withdrawing. So we want to be sure that we really work on our communication, our body language, everything we can when we're engaging with our elderly population or the parents that we're caring for. Remind yourself that everyone has value. Every person has a name. Every person has a history and life story. Every person has a spirit. Every person has feelings and emotions. Every person has a will and a personality. Every person has an environment that they're in. Every person has the present moment. And every person once was a child. So, on a final thought, if you could use a molecular crystal ball to see which sets of genes and variants could predict how long you'll live, would you want to know? So that's just a little something to ponder. If we knew how long we had, would we age differently? Would we do things differently? Um, Something just to think about. So thank you for joining us today. We'll take some questions. Here's some resources for you, and we'll take some questions. Appreciate it.